Buick introduced the Skylark name in 1953, named for the bird. It was intended to be a sportier version of the top-of-the-line Roadmaster convertible, with the body chopped and channeled by hand to make the car more than 3 inches lower, and it had full wheel openings. Outside trim was kept to a minimum, with a simple sweep spear, but no ventiports or portholes. Standard features included power windows and brakes, AM radio, and chrome wire wheels. It was 208 inches long on a 122-inch wheelbase and weighed nearly 4,500 pounds. It used Buick's new 5.3-liter, 322 cubic inch Fireball V8 with 188 horsepower and 300 pound-feet of torque, moving the car to 60 in about 13.5 seconds, and the quarter mile in the low 19s. Top speed was over 100. Sales were just shy of 1,700, perhaps not surprising, as at $5,000 it was $1,500 more than the Roadmaster convertible. The 54 model got new, simpler styling, and remained on the shorter, lighter frame of the 40 series, while other Roadmasters got bigger. It also gained chrome bolt-on fins, and the inner fender wells were painted in contrasting colors. But sales were just over 800, in spite of a $200 price drop, and the Skylark was discontinued. But the name would return in 1961 as the luxury version of Buick's new compact special, as the Special Skylark. It shared its unibody construction with the other compact GM cars introduced that year, the Oldsmobile F-85 Cutlass and Pontiac Tempest Le Mans. Initially, the Skylark was only offered as a two-door sedan, which was 188 inches long on a 112-inch wheelbase, weighing 2,800 pounds. It had upgraded trim, including a vinyl top and interior, and bucket seats were optional. It also had an upgraded engine, adding 30 horsepower to the aluminum 3.5-liter, 215 cubic inch V8 for a total of 185. It got to 60 in 8.5 seconds, did the quarter mile in the mid-16s, and could do nearly 110 miles an hour. Fewer than 13,000 were sold the first year. In 1962, it became available as a convertible and a two-door hardtop, and the V8 gained 5 horsepower. It was now simply badged as a Skylark. It would also see the introduction of Buick's Fireball V6, a 3.2-liter, 198 cubic inch engine with 135 horsepower and 205 pound-feet of torque. Of nearly 164,000 specials sold that year, just over 42,000 were Skylarks. 1963 got updated styling inside and out, getting 5 inches longer, and the V8 gained another 10 horsepower. Transmissions included a 3 on the tree, a 4 on the floor, and a Dynaflow automatic. In 1964, the Special and Skylark would be upgraded to an intermediate, or mid-size. Wheelbase was up to 115 inches, and length 204. The tooling for the 3.5-liter V8 was sold to Rover, and the new engines included a 155 horsepower, 225 pound-foot of torque, 3.7-liter, 225 cubic inch V6, and a 4.9-liter, 300 cubic inch V8 with 210 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque, or 250 horsepower and 352 pound-feet of torque. The Skylark package was now available as a 4-door, and technically as a long wheelbase wagon, although that was simply badged as the Buick Sports Wagon. The Skylark Grand Sport was introduced for 1965 as Buick's entry into the muscle car segment. It added a 401 cubic inch V8 with 325 horsepower and 445 pound-feet of torque, with dual exhaust and a heavy-duty radiator. And 60 came in less than 6.5 seconds, and the quarter mile in under 15, with a top speed over 110. It was the most popular package that year, with nearly 60,000 GSs being sold. For 1966, the 4-door became a hardtop, and a new Wildcat 375 engine became available. A 5.6-liter, 340 cubic inch V8 with 260 horsepower and 365 pound-feet of torque. Of over 100,000 Skylarks sold that year, fewer than 15,000 were the GS. The standard 4-door sedan returned in 1967, and new safety regulations were added among other things. 4-way flashers, shoulder belts, dual reservoir master cylinder, and recessed controls. And the Skylark Grand Sport became the Grand Sport 400 and was joined by a Grand Sport 340. A new semi-fastback with an integrated sweep spear styling arrived for 1968. with 2 doors on 112-inch wheelbase, 4 doors on 116-inch wheelbase, and the Sport Wagon on 121-inch wheelbase. The base Skylark became the middle package above the Special Deluxe, with the top trim level becoming the Skylark Custom. The tooling for the V6 was sold to Jeep and replaced by a Chevy 4.1-liter, 250 cubic inch straight 6 with 155 horsepower and 235 pound-feet of torque. And the 340 increased in size to 350 cubic inches, or 5.7 liters, with 230 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque, or 280 horsepower and 375 pound-feet of torque. The GS400 and the new GS350 and GS California carried on as separate packages. Styling was updated in 1970, with the sweep spear being removed, and it would start sharing its roof line with the Chevy Chevelle. The special name was gone, with the 3 basic trim levels being Skylark, Skylark 350, and Skylark Custom, as well as the continuation of the Sports Wagon and GS 350, while the GS 400 was replaced with the GS 455, offering 350 horsepower, 510 pound-feet of torque Stage 1, and 360 horsepower, 510 pound-feet of torque Stage 2. For an additional $1,100 over the GS 455's $3,100 starting price, you could add the GSX package. In addition to including graphics and spoilers, it added a hood-mounted tack, floor shifter, limited slip differential, and upgraded tires, suspension, and steering, although it was only available in white or yellow the first year. Emissions regulations reduced output for 1971, with the 6 down to 145 horsepower, and the top 350 to 260 gross, while the 455s lost 5 horsepower. But the GSX was available on either version of the GS, 455 or 350, now in a full range of colors, although only 124 were ordered. 1972 saw lower compression combined with a move to net ratings to make power seem to fall dramatically. The 350 to 150 horsepower and 265 pound-feet of torque, and 180 horsepower and 275 pound-feet of torque, and the 455, 225 horsepower and 360 pound-feet of torque, and 270 horsepower and 390 pound-feet of torque. Prices ranged from $3,000 to $3,500, and of over 210,000 sold that year, only 8,500 were the GS, and only 44 the GSX. New styling for 1973 had the full line renamed Century, including the wagon and GS. It also saw Buick re-enter the compact market with its own version of the Chevy Nova called the Apollo, which, with the 1975 restyle, 2-door versions of the Apollo became Skylarks, including the hatchback. At 200 inches long, on a 111-inch wheelbase, and weighing nearly 3,800 pounds, it wasn't particularly compact. Base engine was the 4.1-liter, 250 cubic inch Chevy Straight 6 for the Apollo, while the Skylark once again used a Buick V6, after buying the tooling back from AMC, who now owned Jeep. The V6 was now 3.8 liters, or 231 cubic inches, with 110 horsepower and 175 pound-feet of torque net. Optional engines included the Oldsmobile 4.3-liter 260 V8, with 110 horsepower and 209 pound-feet of torque, or Buick's 5.7-liter 350 V8 and 145 horsepower, 270 pound-feet of torque, and 160 horsepower, 260 pound-feet of torque versions. Sporty models were now designated Sports Rally, or SR, and did an 18-second quarter mile and could reach nearly 120 miles an hour. For 1976, 4-door versions were also Skylarks, with the base V6, and all Buicks were given patriotic colors for the bicentennial, names that ranged from Judicial Black to Pewter Gray to Musket Brown to the unfortunate Congressional Cream. 1977 would see a shuffling of engine options, with the 260 going away, and both a Pontiac 5-liter 301 and a Chevy 5-liter 305 being added, with 135 horsepower and 145 horsepower respectively, both with 245 pound-feet of torque, while the Buick 350 was down to 140 and 150 horsepower versions with 275 pound-feet of torque. For 1978, An 170 horsepower, 275 pound-feet of torque Chevy 350 was added to the options list. The V6 gained 10 horsepower for 1979, but production was cut short in anticipation of the upcoming all-new downsized front-wheel drive model. This new Skylark was on GM's infamous X-body platform that would be the basis of GM front-wheel drive cars going forward. Initially to much acclaim, but soon to be followed by quality issues and record recalls. Offered as a 2- or 4-door, it was 182 inches long on a 105-inch wheelbase, weighing 2,500 to 2,600 pounds. Base engine was the old 2.5-liter Pontiac Iron Duke with 90 horsepower and 134 pound-feet of torque. Optional engine was a 2.5-liter V6 with 115 horsepower and 145 pound-feet of torque. Either a 4-speed manual or a 3-speed automatic could be had, offered in base, sport, or limited trim levels. A V6 4-speed coupe took 10 seconds to reach 60, did the quarter mile in the mid-17s, and had a top speed near 110. Sales were over 265,000. For 1982, the 4-cylinder gained fuel injection, and a high-output version of the V6 was offered with 135 horsepower. 1983 models got a minor facelift, and the Sport was renamed T-Type. Sales were down under 95,000 for 1985, when it was sold alongside the new 2-door in-body Somerset Regal, the 4-door version of which would be the new Skylark for 1986, while the 2-door became simply the Somerset, although the Skylark had analog gauges and the Somerset digital ones. The 4-cylinder carried over, but the V6 was up to a 3-liter with 125 horsepower and 150 pound-feet of torque. The 4-speed was replaced by an Isuzu 5-speed, but it was only available with the 4-cylinder. Custom and limited trim levels were offered. In 1987, the sporty T-Type carried over from the Somerset to the Skylark models, and for 1988, 2-doors were once again Skylarks, but sales dropped in half. The T-Type was replaced by the SE, now with Oldsmobile's 2.3-liter, 150 horsepower, 160 pound-feet of torque, Quad 4. A year later, the V6 was enlarged to 3.3 liters with 160 horsepower and 185 pound-feet of torque, and there was a new LE package with more chrome and a vinyl top, and the manual went away. There was a minor shifting of packages for 1990, with base, custom, limited, LE, and the GS was revived to replace the SE. New styling arrived for 1992 with improved aerodynamics. It was supposed to have a retro element to it, but most people just thought it was weird looking, and packages were reduced to base and GS. The base engine was now 120 horsepower and 140 pound-feet of torque, 2.3-liter 4, and the 6 carried over. In 1993, the base model was once again called the Custom, and the Limited also returned. A smaller 3.1-liter Chevy V6 with 155 horsepower and 185 pound-feet of torque became the optional engine in 1994. The dual overhead cam 150 horsepower Quad 4 returned as an option for 1995, and a 4-speed automatic also became optional. A 1996 facelift made the car much more conservative looking, but sales did not improve. There was also an Olympic Gold edition to celebrate 100 years of the Olympic Games. The car would carry on through 1998, but final year production was strictly for fleet sales, and the Skylark would not be replaced until the Verano of 2012, a car that only lasted 5 years in the U.S., but has continued on in China. And as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment below and like and subscribe.
Mm-hmm.